On this episode of AV Week, AVIXA has announced its board for 2018, why you would want to sell your integration firm, and lasers at a planetarium. All that and more next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 325, recorded Friday, November 17th, 2017. Cut Sheet Technology.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Extron Electronics and by Daylight, the leading producer of high-quality projection screens worldwide.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audio-visual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to talk about that very thing, the news and information, his name is Bill Lally. He is from Moat Green. How are you, sir?
Good, and yourself?
Good. Good to see you.
You too.
We are, if you followed along either on social media or on our various platforms, this is our first time back in the studio in about 2 weeks. You can check out on the website our adventures at both New York Digital Signage Week and the AV Executive Conference from AVIXA from last week. So I am very happy to be sitting in my own chair again and in my own seat and sleeping in my own bed for the first time in a month, it feels like. So let's talk about AVIXA, actually. First story up here. The story we're going to use comes to us from Innovate on the Net. Two different stories, but the first one up is we'll talk about is AVIXA revealing their 2018 board of directors. We're going to go down the list here, and we'll talk to Bill about each of these. So the 2018 AVIXA board of directors are as follows. The LSC chair, and if you don't know what LSC, it's the Leadership Search Committee. This is the group that actually goes out and looks for the next leaders, the leadership of AVIXA. Is Gary Hall from Cisco Systems. The president of the board is Julian Phillips from Whitlock. Joe Pham from QSC is the president-elect. Secretary-treasurer is Jeff Day of Blue Water Technologies. And the directors are as follows. Steve Durkee from Milestone AV Technologies. And eventually that will be the AV group under LeGrand. Wallace Johnson from Mertz Crew. Also a host on AVNation. He hosts our live show. Xiaoling Liu from Beijing Oriental Prime Connections Film and Technology. Laura Moorhead from Blue Sky Integrated Technologies. Rebecca Onchi from PayPal. Samantha Phoenix from Planar. Martin Saul and John Sidwick from Maverick. So, Bill, first question up for you.
Yeah.
After looking at all these and after I've read all of these off,
right.
What I want to ask you is do they have a good mix here of people that are representative of the industry on the board?
I think so. Some of these guys I know personally, some of the companies I've worked with in various lives, and some of them I'm not familiar with, but I think with AVIXA's new branding and launch platform away from Infocomm and the diversity they're looking to go into in various verticals and focusing more on experience than nuts and bolts technology, I think it is a good mix. I think one of the challenges that we've had as an industry in general is that we're too hung up selling technology to technology people and assuming that everybody wants to buy a cut sheet. And we've forgotten what the heck it's actually supposed to do when it all fits together. And so it's always been my opinion that the industry has somewhat missed the mark of selling that experience. And so I'm happy that, with the rebranding and with the sort of new approach and guiding the mindset of us as the integrators and technologists, that we really start to understand that it's not always a technologist that's sitting on the other side of the table using our stuff, and we have to make it work simply and effectively in creating that experience for them. So I think, not all these people are directly related in the AV world, and I think it's a good thing, and obviously bring a lot of skill sets from the user side of things as well, which I think that, quite frankly, we've been lacking. So yeah, I think it's a good mix.
I want to bring that point out, that the user side of things. Rebecca from is from PayPal.
Right. Small company.
Could be wrong. A small company, yeah. It could be wrong. A company who is now, I believe, fully extracted themselves from eBay. That one time they were a single company, and now they've actually separated completely now.
Right.
In looking at this list, and I could be wrong, and I'm absolutely willing to for somebody to point out where I'm wrong, but I believe that is the only technology manager, let's say, end user on the board.
Right.
Should we have more of those? I mean, to get more of a sense, or do we have a good, is having one, good enough for that voice?
I think, to me, I'd be curious to know what her role there specifically is. If she's maybe involved in the finance side of AVIXA too.
No.
I'm not familiar with her role, but
well, really quickly,
more user input, the better.
Real quickly to kind of clarify what she is. She's in charge of the AV group at PayPal.
Thank you. Okay.
I think she reports to the CIO or the CTO at PayPal,
great.
And she's responsible for that group.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. So I think. It is interesting. Actually, Gary Hall and I sat on a smart building task force a couple of years ago for Infocomm, and he was sort of on the user side at that point. And it's interesting to see now that with Cisco merging and Tenberg taking over and becoming more of an AV technology instead of a network technology, I think that'll be some interesting perspective coming in too, especially in a chair position. But I think definitely, I think that the more discussions we have, and a lot of what we do in our business is meeting with designers and architects and trying to understand even how that process works for them and how we integrate to it, and the construction side, how do we give technology a fair shake in new construction to get schedules that need to be appropriated for commissioning and all these sorts of things. So I think, again, getting out of the technology mindset and understanding who we're building the systems for is important. And certainly internally, we need to drive it as an AV-centric organization, but we also need to know what our target is and why we're building experiences now instead of systems, right?
Well, and to that, last year, Infocomm, I'm trying to say this correctly so I don't, because of the change between Infocomm and AVIXA.
Right.
Infocomm, the show, had their first end user-ish targeted event in Tide, the Tuesday before the show opened. They're replicating that at ISE this year, the Integrated Systems Europe, that's happening. Half owned. Right. So they're reaching out, right? They're inviting people who aren't necessarily consider themselves technologists, and back to AVIXA CEO Dave Labuskis's point, there's an avatar that he's used for probably 6 months to a year now that I actually asked him about when we interviewed him about the change, and that is this person who is a content creator for digital signage and for projector mapping. That they don't consider themselves part of the audiovisual industry,
right?
But AVIXA does, right? So they're creating this content. They're creating these education spaces. They're creating things like Tide to bring these people in and say, you are, we consider you part of us. And I think some of the board, it looks like it, at least they are definitely going that direction with some of the folks that they've invited on the board, and with what the LSC has been looking for the last year or so.
Definitely. Dave and I actually had that same conversation. I had mentioned prior to us starting our show here that we were sitting on a common panel for the New York Hotel Technology and Design Show. And that was the same exact thing with me. And we have a huge focus in hospitality technology as a company. And I've always had associations with Infocomm in the sense that I was a restaurant programmer for 15 years before I started an integration firm and focused heavily in the hospitality market. But where Infocomm was an interest to me because it was a lot of my history, but as far as the particular concepts of that didn't really apply into my world. And it's nice now, and part of what they've begun this year is that they're launching new verticals in hospitality and retail and finance and a handful of other verticals that they really didn't address before and weren't so much inclusive in what that concept was. And it's nice to see now that they are addressing those pieces, because the AV technologies in those spaces is incredibly complex, but not specifically falling into the typical sort of boardroom environment or what you would consider typical sort of Infocomm scope. And so this brings a whole new life to that. So it's actually personally exciting for me in the sense that we can be heavily involved in helping the general audiovisual industry and a particular specialty that we have too. So I like the change. No.
And even though Bill said that we're not going to focus on technology, that's exactly what we're going to do on our next story.
Right.
AV Interactive.
We want. Vixx is not going to do it, right?
Vixx is not going to do it, but we are. So this is from our AV Interactive talking about New Mexico Museum of Space History is installing the first 4K laser full dome planetarium projection system.
Right. which is just awesome.
Yeah, I mean it's 4K and it's lasers, so I'm already on board. And it's
what could go wrong? Exactly.
Yeah,
it's got to be lasers if it's a space thing, right?
Well, yes.
Star Wars.
I'm from St. Louis, and if you paid attention at all to the eclipse from this past year, which I'm not quite sure how you could ignore it if you're in the States, it came right over us. I mean, we had, technically where I physically was, a little town called Alton on the Illinois side, right on the river. I think I had like 95% coverage.
Right.
Just east of me is a little town called Carbondale.
Okay.
That actually is where the eclipse was 100%. And
no kidding! How cool!
Yeah. And actually, is it 7 years? 7 years. I think it's 2024 is when the next time it's going to happen. Again, it'll be the 100% coverage will be in Carbondale.
Very cool.
So yes, the planetarium is very cool. Yes, you have to have lasers if you're talking about space.
Right.
But you mentioned the fact that hospitality is Mode Green's kind of one of your guys' main verticals.
Right.
When it comes to stuff like whether it's 4K or it's projection mapping, where do you guys go to when it comes to the next technology advance? I mean, do you live on the bleeding edge? Do you go to Infocom to Infocom the show? Or you go to ISC and it's like, holy crap, there's a 16K plasma laser projection mapping system that's going to be released for the very first time in 3 months. We're going to install it in the very next week.
Right.
Or do you more say, okay, this has been out a while, it's fully baked now we're going to put it in?
No, we actually end up on the bleeding edge far more than I think I'd like, in the sense that we are working with a lot of brands specifically that are constantly trying to reinvent and outdo each other. And one of the interesting points of this panel I had mentioned over the weekend was that hotels, particularly in our market, were always a place and a destination to go where things were better than you had at home. The service was incredible, the food was incredible, the technology was superior, and access to movies that weren't available at home yet. It was a destination experience. And there's been a complete dynamic shift in the sense that now you can go to Home Depot and buy stuff off the shelf that's way better than you can find in most hotels. And so it's a complete technology mind shift as far as how do you invent and create and do something new, and at the same time enable all of those nice things that you can do at home now and bring them with you. And so the technology integration piece of bringing your own device and all these other pieces that come into play, the hotels have to support that now. So that's from the sort of guest room side. But then from a branding standpoint, you've got companies that are just trying to be hip and cool, and from a technology sort of inviting you into the lobby scenario are off the charts as far as what the conceptual things are that we're seeing coming down the line. And so I think they have to innovate, and it's a different environment than having to build something that's consistent for a boardroom environment or something like that, where it really is a show experience. And so it's not just about the video systems and the audio systems, but it's about a fully interactive experience with lighting control and scheduling and circadian lighting and all these things that are then technology and controls based, coming into a common platform to help define what the brand actually is. And so it's a very different look on what the typical use of something like this would be. I mean, this is a really cool concept too. But the things that we're using for and being asked to do to innovate on technology have to do with more segregating and differentiating from brand to brand. So it's fun for us to play in that.
Is it more than, and you correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it sounds to me like the area that you live in and you guys work in is an interesting combination of theme park and living space, right?
Yeah, essentially, right.
And also live staging and events.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, it is all over the place, and so we have to sort of incorporate all of that into a single system in most cases. So yeah, part of it's production, part of it's is residential, part of it is commercial, and never mind the fact that you've got 400 other systems going on at the same time that interact with like key cards and all this other, whatever the thermostat systems, and all of these pieces are completely integrated into a single concept.
And it all runs on BACnet, just for the record.
Sorry?
I said, and it all runs on BACnet.
Yeah. A lot of times it does. You're right. Theoretically, and then you got to make it happen, right?
Well, you got to make it happen.
Yeah. But no, I think we do.
Programming joke.
Yeah. So we do get asked to innovate a lot of things and come up with some crazy concepts on things. And mostly, we get to work with a lot of great designers and lighting designers as well. And it's really a matter of how do we execute the concepts that they're coming up with. And so it's not our harebrained ideas all the time, but it's a matter of how do we execute the vision that they're seeing, or if they want to get something done and accomplish something from a guest experience or branding standpoint, how do we pick and choose from all the various technologies that are out there to make that happen? And so that becomes fun for us.
Yeah. All right. Last story here, and I'll let you get out of here, and we can both enjoy our pre-Thanksgiving weekend. This is from AV Network. This is from a young man by the name of France Cassius, talking about what your firm needs to be acquired in 2018. France goes on down the way of saying, valuations of AV system design and integration firms are still attractive, low interest rates, need to scale in order to compete. Also, foreign firms are actively looking to acquire U.S. platforms. I'm not going to ask you, Bill, directly if Road Green is looking to get acquired. But from an integrator standpoint,
we all have our price, right? Yeah.
Well, yeah, everybody has a price. If you watched wrestling in the 90s or in the 80s with me, everybody has a price. Do you want to get acquired? I guess is the first question. I mean, yes, everybody has a price, but dude, I've talked with integration companies, the owners of integration companies who get calls on a weekly basis. Not exaggerating here. Get calls on a weekly basis from investment firms and venture capitalists.
Right.
And more often than not, it's not the number, right? Because some of these folks are on the SCN top 50.
Sure.
Right? So these are not small companies.
No.
And they're being offered attractive packages. They love what they do.
Yeah.
They get up in the morning. They're excited to go to work. They enjoy who they work with. They enjoy the work that they do. And these are folks that are your and I's age, right? They're in their 30s or 40s or 50s, and they're not ready to retire yet.
Right.
So they're saying no. So that's why I'm asking the question: do you want to get acquired?
I mean, if me personally, no, not either. There's twofold to it. One, I'd be a horrific employee for somebody else if I had to get answered. That wouldn't happen. But I think, no, you're right. It is, so much of our industry is born out of somebody's hobby, really, or however you want to put it, that you've created this thing. And it is, you're so personally invested in it that it would be very hard to give it up and give it away. And you do love what you do every day. And what do? We travel around to fantastic resorts all over the place. It's not so bad. And at the same time, we're innovating. We're doing the things that we love and playing in technology. And I think you see it with even the manufacturing technology companies that get acquired by some bigger technology conglomerate. You lose control. No decisions ever get made. The innovation goes out the window. It's very hard to continue to innovate when you have to answer to a board or you have to answer to stockholders or anything like that. I think we've all seen the results of what happens when companies get taken over and go public or anything else. But I think if that happens, they're going to start to swallow these companies up and sell out and really have no concept with what they've bought, have no understanding of what the demands are from a managed services standpoint, and really try to put too much red tape around what is a very dynamic and very fast-paced market that they simply wouldn't understand coming from not the world we live in.
Well, it's also interesting if you look at the dynamic and you look at the landscape of the audiovisual industry. I'm going to be very liberal with this estimation. You can probably count on two hands the number of audiovisual companies that are publicly traded.
Right.
I think you make a good point about being, beholden to stockholders and being innovative, right? Being agile. What really good friend of mine, actually, he's an underwriter of us. He's another manufacturer.
Right.
Who I think he says he gets a fruit basket every year from a larger conglomerate, publicly traded company.
Yep.
That is looking to purchase them, and he's like, I'm having fun.
Yeah, right.
And I'm able, back to your point, I'm able to be innovative and I'm able to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Calculated mistakes.
Yeah, right. And you know the price, and you know the risk, and if you screw up, you suck it up and move on, right? It's how we've all gotten to do what we do. And I mean, even from the user side, on our side, as the integrator side, working with various manufacturers, it's blatantly different working with publicly traded ones versus privately held ones. Specifically from a personal understanding or support standpoint, I got something that breaks and I need it, and I need an advanced replacement. Something as silly as that. And sometimes it's like, well, we're not going to ship you a new one because we need to account for the inventory of getting the old one back. It's like, wait a minute, this doesn't work this way. No. It's choking the entire process of what we do from a performance standpoint as, in trying to meet our clients' needs. And I think it's a very simple example, but it kind of rolls uphill from there. And it just doesn't seem to work very well.
No, you're absolutely right. All right. On that cheery note,
Yeah.
on that cheery note, I'm going to let you get out of here. Mr. Billy Lally, thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
How do people find you and or Mode Green?
We are at www.modegreen.com. It's probably the best place to find us, or our office in New York. My email is bill@modegreen.com, and hope to see you soon.
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. I appreciate it. My name is Tim Albright. Don't follow me, but go by the website if you would, please, AVNation.tv, AVNation.tv. That is where you will find this program and a host of others. While you're there, please check out the underwriter section. These are the folks who support us and help us do the things that we do, including bringing you this program, bringing you New York Digital Signage Week and AVEC and all the things we've done for the last month and a half or so. They also help us try new things like our new The AV Profession podcast, where we look at the business of AV. We were actually starting to interview a number of business leadership authors. Our first one was our buddy Ian Altman, author of Same Side Selling. That was done last month, so you can check that out. Coming up in about 2 weeks, we're going to be interviewing Stephen M.R. Covey, the author of The Speed of Trust. So check that out and more, all at AVNation.tv. AVNation.tv, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. This has been AV Week.